The Maserati Quattroporte is the biggest pile of crap I've ever driven, and I don't take that lightly. I've driven some pretty questionable stuff. This is the Maserati from Car Trek 3, and I knew that it was gonna be unreliable, but I had no idea to what degree. So I went on a short little drive with Mr. Ed Bolian to see just how many times this thing broke. By far the slowest electric seat ever. Mr. Bolian.
Hey. So this is the car that Freddie Tavares Hernandez gave me for Car Trek 3. The premise was that we were to find the most unreliable cars on Earth.
I think he found it.
I think he did, and I had really given him a hard time. All right, so you're gonna first put it into neutral.
Like this?
Yep. And then...
Not calibrated.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Here we go.
There we go.
Check engine light, battery light, oil light.
Hey!
Oh, man.
Purring like a kitten.
Oh, my seat heater's on by default.
Oh, nice. That's a new problem. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, no TPMS, not active. Check engine light, present.
Jeez,
we checked
dude.
it. Service expired, of course.
Oh my
as it would
gosh.
be.
I've never seen a car Christmas tree like this, and it's like normal and factory.
Yes. This was the first generation of Maserati's four-door car, the Quattroporte, and it has their Duo Select transmission, which is essentially the Ferrari 612 gearbox, their F1A. So it's a single clutch sequential manual, paddle shifted transmission, but people bought the car thinking they were buying an alternative to an S-Class or a 7 Series that would just drive like a normal car.
So do you need to drive this a lot like a pre-LP Gallardo?
Absolutely,
where you're kind of neutraling to the stop and all that?
Normally, yes. However, when you do that with this car, it dies immediately. So the reason you do that in those cars is to take the torque off the throwout bearing.
Yeah, so it doesn't wear it out.
Exactly, but you can't do that. We don't get to afford the throwout bearing such treatment. So it doesn't really behave itself much at all, but that was the point. You know, this is a consumer advice we're doing of the cars you should not buy, despite how tempting it would be to own a $7,000. When you put the computer on it, it might have about 50,000 more miles.
You think it's a rollback?
It appears to have been rolled.
Oh, this is like literally every bad thing.
Yes, so when it was generally we don't fix these cars, but this one, in fact, when we got it, we discovered it had to be fixed. The alternator had to be replaced, which is not an easy feat because in their wisdom and in keeping the engine compact, they put it under the intake plenum.
Which I noticed.
And so that is brand new-ish in the car because at first the car would only go 3 miles or 30 minutes, whichever comes first.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah,
before things go
exactly.
bad.
You've got options here. You can click that, or you can bump this electrical taped little shifty thing in the center console forward.
This is so tragic.
You don't ever want that to say D because it will drive as broken as possible. So, now you have to go to manual or automatic shift button.
Okay.
And now you're good. Now, fortunately, it will start in sport, unlike most Ferraris. So we are in the easiest.
We haven't moved yet.
And
everything's gone wrong.
Yes. You want to just be deliberate with the throttle because you want it to get off the clutch as fast as possible.
Okay, so what do you think made these cars just so notoriously unreliable? Just lack of research and development, or just not caring?
I think people believed at Ferrari that their customers wanted a car like this that they could just drive every day.
Sure.
They didn't realize it would break if you did so.
The first time I had enough experience in a Maserati was unfortunately the Ghibli.
You told me.
And I had it in Europe. I had it for a week, and I found it completely unacceptable as an $80,000 car. And you know, we were all making jokes calling it the Dodgerati and all that because it has Dodge Dart parts in it.
Mostly Dodge.
Yeah, and you're just like, how did this get past the drawing board? You know, but I've always heard growing up, listening to people I looked up to growing up, like Matt Farah and Rob Ferretti and all those guys going, never touch Maseratis, especially the Quattroporte. But I've never heard a good thing about this car, ever, not one. And even when you adjust the seat, all the leather's rubbing against each other, like the clearances aren't right, the electronics are slow, the gearbox is bad, like I just don't get it. The clear coat's going away.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like, just everything.
Wood's cracked. Oh, I will warn you, the brakes are non-existent. Yeah. So just don't plan on them helping you to not.
No.
Yeah. I mean, they make noise. They do make noise. That's all they make. All right, let's let it eat.
We got lamp failure.
Okay, well, the lamps don't like to go fast. That's
what kind of sense is that?
Right. We don't need the lamps right now.
We do one acceleration in this thing and it has a heart attack already. Who would have thought your cheapest shift light of all time was your lamp failure?
If the lamps fail, it's time to shift. That's probably in the owner's manual.
It's literally, the moment I got into it, I heard the sound. I'm like, this could trick people. Because I was like, oh, you got a rumbly Italian V8. It's smooth.
Yes.
At first, you're like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but then that happens. Maybe I'm being too hard on it. Maybe I'm just being unrealistic. And then that happens, and you're like, nope. Halfway through the pull.
Yes. The suspension feel is weird because it's a fixed suspension, so there's
like
not
this.
anything adaptive, which is actually kind of nice because that would be the huge liabilities of your cars like an S-Class.
Sure.
But it's just so bad. Throw it into neutral. Pull it both in. Oh, it died. There you go. So now
you were kidding. No power steering.
We're just gonna turn this off. And now it's back on. So
check in progress.
That's it. And it passed the check.
TPMS. Check engine. Tire pressure. Execute calibration.
So that's what happens. So once you learn not to do that, don't throw it into neutral as
what
you
you're
normally
supposed
would.
to
Exactly.
do
Well,
with this gearbox.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's not like you're in an auto, in a normal commuter car on the highway throwing it into neutral. This was designed to go into neutral.
Yeah, there's a robot riding atop your transmission that is doing everything you'd like to be doing were it a real stick.
Oh, we're getting idle fluctuations.
Little idle flooded there. We'll say, despite this coolant smell we have right now, the temperature stays dead on.
I opened the door and it's making noise behind the radio.
Now this one in 2005, due to the early success of the Quattroporte in sales, before people learned how unreliable they were, actually this car was sold through the Neiman Marcus catalog.
Whoa.
They built 60 in this color combination. The exterior color is called Bordeaux Pontevecchio. And they sold them through the catalog, all 60 of them, which are numbered by this little dash plaque,
dedicated
sold out
to Mona
in 30 minutes. Yes, this one was then dedicated to Mona. Which is what you should call this car, I think. It is Mona. Yes. And so they sold out immediately, and they have kind of commanded a little bit of a premium relative to the normal ones, but I mean, obviously this one is just terrible.
You can see how it could just fool people.
Everybody else thinks it's a $100,000 car. Maserati
has this weird brand image that's so positive, unless you're a car person. Like, everybody else thinks that Maserati is this premium brand, that there's nothing wrong with it, that it's like top tier, right?
An Italian sports car.
Right, but
and, the Top Gear guys always talked about Alfa Romeo that way. Like, they're terrible cars that all petrol heads should buy one day. And I kind of feel that way about Maserati. Like, everybody who considers themselves a car guy at least has some deep down temptation to really experience a Maserati. Yeah, that was like a hard throttle shift where it should be performing ideally. It's still awful. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like the pre-LP, when you're just like, you can count to 2 in between the shifts.
Correct. Even in driving it, you're a passenger in a poorly shifted manual transmission. Like somebody who's just learning, figuring it out.
You're right. That's what my brain was going to, was somebody in high school learning how to drive manual.
Right. Because when you drive a stick car, even though there's a torque interruption, you still kind of brace yourself and you anticipate it. But in this, you hit the paddle and you don't know what's going to happen. Well, the motor is okay. I mean, it's 390 some odd horsepower. It's not terribly slow. It makes a pretty good noise. It's really all in the build quality, the electronics, and the transmission. So this thing has all the electrical liabilities you could ever imagine. When I was working at Lamborghini Atlanta, we sold a bunch of used ones, and even in the later Gran Turismos, which had the better gearbox, the CF automatic, you'd still hit the window and the rear sunshade would come up. Or you'd change the air conditioning and the windshield wipers would come on.
So somebody at the factory just switched the wires or the pins or something weird.
They act like flood cars when they're fine. It being a Ferrari and Fiat product, all of the plastic parts are now so sticky that if you touch them, they'll paint your fingers black.
Yeah, no, I noticed the leather is wearing down. Like, just like if you look at, like you mentioned, behind the door handle, the plastic looks like melted epoxy. Yes. It doesn't even look like it's smooth plastic anymore.
I've never seen an Alcantara headliner that looked like it was what the passengers rode on.
Like a saddle?
Oh my god.
Yeah, it looks like a saddle.
So worn out.
Here's the thing is, like, it's not a sports car where people are being shuffled about all the time, where it's wearing out seats and stuff. It's literally a car people sit in and nothing happens.
Right.
And it's just so absurd that I remember everybody telling me, yeah, past 30,000 miles, those Quattroportes run. Just absolutely run.
Run away, yeah. And that's, you know, what we were trying to do here. And so the cars that we pitted it against were an 80s Rolls Royce.
Okay.
And the Lamborghini V10 engined Audi S8. And both of those cars were also terrible and notoriously unreliable. You bought it thinking like you were beating the game, like everybody else is out there buying a new S-Class. You're a Maserati owner, which was prestigious because remember, this is only a few years after Maserati's return to the US market in 02 with the Coupe and the Spider.
You see wood trim, you automatically think, oh yeah, expensive, right?
Right.
And it's kind of like the Jaguars, you know, from like the mid-2000s, which were Fords underneath during Ford's bad timing, you know, and so they just had unreliable everything, but you're paying $74,000 for those.
Oh, exactly, yeah. And when you think about these cars that sort of unwittingly people buy them. They think, oh, this is going to be a great experience. I'm going to have this cool car. And then they discover all the terrible things. Like, most of this car's parts are worth more than I paid for this car.
Just individually.
Exactly. The shift actuator, I mean, those things are twice the value of the car.
Just because they're rare, or it's because they break all the time and people want the parts?
Well, so both. Yeah, nobody wants the parts, but they end up having to replace them. So every time the car breaks, you have this question of like, is it worth fixing?
Or do I just ditch this thing?
Exactly. Like, do I cut my losses and stop paying to fix it? I mean, the alternator, I called Ferrari Maserati of Atlanta just to ask them how much it was. And they're like, well, when you replace the alternator, you got to replace the intake gaskets, and obviously you got to replace the drive belt. And so all in with labor, $3,000.
Just for an alternator.
Exactly. And
I knew it was going to have its fault, but it doesn't make a good first impression. It doesn't make a good driving impression either.
It makes you glad to park it somewhere.
Yeah.
It looks pretty when you walk up to it. Sounds pretty good if it passes you. It doesn't do that often because it's broken. It's between its natural appearances on tow trucks. You know, there's a little bit to like. All the buttons are so cheap.
Yeah, no, it just
the mirror adjustment's broken. Just fiddly loose, all the things.
I think this is a video of just warning, don't fall for it.
Well, that was the premise. Is like, as enthusiasts, we see cars like this and we get tempted into owning them, and it's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But you know, they're still, like with any car, when you put it in, there are some circumstances that I found with the car where finally you figured out its idiosyncrasies and you don't get startled when the lamps fail.
Any conclusions, sir?
Don't buy this Maserati. Probably don't buy any Maserati. If you go to a later Gran Turismo, a 13 Stradale or something like that, it's ownable for sure.
But people go lease Ghiblies to look cool, and it's cheap.
It is cheap. They're like $400 or $500 a month.
It's crazy.
I don't understand how the residuals work.
I don't either.
But
anyway,
consumer advice.
What do you guys think about Maserati? Thank you so much, Mr. Bullion, for letting me drive this hunk of junk. Just gonna be blunt.
That's it.
This is probably the meanest I've been to a car ever in a review. It's just terrible.
Welcome it. Absolutely.
That's right. Make sure to check out vinwiki. Bullion is the man. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye. This video is brought to you by Patterson Car Care. Get double of premium original detail product for half the price. Head over to PattersonCarCare.com or go to the link in the description below.